My older sister was chosen to be a sacrificial bride for the Fox Immortal. At midnight, the chilling sound of the sonar trumpet echoed through every corner of the village. Next morning, my sister was nailed to the statue of the Fox Immortal. Her clothes were disheveled. A long bloodstain ran across her belly, and through the wound, gnawed intestines were faintly visible. Her mouth was black and wide open like a bottomless pit. Yet, I distinctly remembered that the one married off last night was not my sister. Lunar New Year was approaching again, and my parents were both frowning with worry. Firstly, because of the failed harvest this year, and secondly, because it was our family's turn to offer a sacrifice. My sister, Anya, was only 14, in the prime of her blooming youth, and exceedingly beautiful. At that moment, she sat on the bed, her eyes red and swollen, weeping incessantly. Father sat on a chair, smoking his pipe, while the village chief sat by the door, patiently advising, "Mr. Chen, don't do anything foolish." The village chief, puffing on his pipe, continued, "That year, Liu Quan's family also had second thoughts, and the entire family met a tragic end. That year, our village's harvest failed. At this, the village chief turned to me. 'You cannot take such a risk.' Father threw his pipe to the ground, grabbed a hoe, and stormed out of the house. By afternoon, Father still hadn't returned, but the villagers had arrived. Several strong young men carried a large, vibrant red sedan chair and placed it in the courtyard. As night fell, Father carried a sack into the house, his face covered in dust. He urged me back to my room, strictly cautioning me not to go out, no matter what happened that night. This should have been a day for family reunion, but the village was eerily silent. I sat by the window, watching Father lead my sister, dressed in a red wedding gown, into the sedan chair. In the stillness of the late night, I could still hear my sister's sobs. She usually loved me dearly, and hearing her cry like that now, my heart was torn to pieces. I softly opened the door, fumbling through the darkness to reach the sedan chair. "Sister, it's Nina. Can you hear me?" I spoke, then waited in silence for her reply, but apart from her weeping, no other sound reached my ear. A surge of panic, I reached out to lift my sister's veil. In that very instant, I nearly died of fright. A woman with a greenish-black face, festering skin, and a body swollen, as if waterlogged, sat in the sedan chair. Simultaneously, a putrid stench assailed my nostril. Terrified, I ran straight back to my room. I knew the woman in the sedan chair. It was Kaoni, who had drowned in the village pond a few days prior. I don't know how much time passed, but a rustling sound seemed to come from the courtyard. I fumbled through the darkness to the window, carefully pulling back the curtain to look. Under the bright moonlight, several human-shaped weasels were circling the sedan chair. Just then, in the silent night, a piercing sonar trumpet shattered the stillness. It was supposed to be a joyful melody, but it immediately turned utterly terrified. The sedan chair, which normally required 4 strong young men to carry, was now being borne away by 4 weasels, as if it were a mere toy. The music grew fainter and fainter. Unable to sleep all night, I shivered with cold, constantly feeling as if something was breathing icy air into my ear. The next morning, to bid farewell to the bride, we had to go to the Fox Immortal's temple to offer our respects. My parents pulled me out of my blanket, bundled me in thick cotton clothes, and led me outside. As the first rays of morning sunlight shone, Elder Wu pushed open the doors of the Fox Immortal's temple. And at that very moment, a piercing shriek erupted from the crowd. I lifted my head from my mother's embrace to look up. Before the dim and eerie statue of the Fox Immortal, emanating an aura of malevolence, stood a woman in a red wedding gown. When I looked closer, I realized the woman was my own sister, Anya. Her expression was one of immense agony, her limbs nailed tightly to the Fox Immortal statue with long, slender wooden spikes. Her bodice was torn open. A long blood stain ran from her chest to her belly, and through the wound, gnawed intestines were faintly visible. Her mouth was black and wide open, like a bottomless pit. Father let out a roar, tore off his padded jacket, and lunged towards my sister, while Mother frantically pulled me and ran outside. Mother dragged me home, and then frantically rushed down into the root cellar. How could this be? How could this be? Mother slumped to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. I had clearly stayed awake all night, afraid to sleep. How could this still have happened? I stepped into the cellar, only then realizing that the entire earthen wall was splattered with dark red blood stains, and bits of minced flesh were scattered on the ground. And Kioni, the woman who had drowned, was now sitting upright on a chair, the stench of decay filling the cellar. In the afternoon, Elder Wu and the village chief came to our house. Elder Wu looked distraught. The Fox Immortal must be enraged. The village's decision is to offer Nina to appease the Fox Immortal's wrath. What did you say? Father exploded, leaping to his feet, his eyes bloodshot. You've already taken one daughter from me, and now you want to take my only remaining one? What Fox Immortal? I see nothing but feudal superstition. There are so many of us. Let's go to its lair together. I don't believe we can't kill it. Father was so furious, he threw everything within reach to the ground. Elder Wu paled, quickly covering my father's mouth. Shh! If you want to die, don't drag me with you. A girl, a year. Village chief, have you ever thought about your own young daughter? Father wiped his face and looked at the village chief, then at Elder Wu. And you, Elder Wu? Don't you also have a daughter? If that child were still alive now, would you have the heart to give her to the Fox Immortal? The village chief and Elder Wu fell silent, smoking continuously. I squatted in the corner, my vision gradually blurring in the swirling smoke. In a daze, I seemed to see my older sister, Anya. She was wearing coarse cloth clothes, her entire body smeared black. Mother, while smearing ash on her face, instructed tonight, "You must not say a word, close your eyes and sleep. Absolutely do not open the cellar door. Mother will guard the door for you. Don't be afraid." Then Mother pushed my sister's hand away, grabbed a stick nearby, and walked out the door. The iron door clanged shut. The iron door clanged shut. In the dark cellar, only a faint oil lamp burned. My sister, Anya, just like me, was curled up in a corner. At some point, my sister had fallen asleep. Just then, a rustling sound reached my ear. I followed the sound with my gaze, only then discovering a small hole behind the deepest earthen jar. I watched as the hole grew larger and larger. Then a hairy leg reached in. It was a weasel. I frantically ran to my sister, wanting to wake her, but no matter how I called, she didn't react. I saw the weasel getting closer. Then it bit my sister's ankle. My sister, in her sleep, suddenly opened her eyes. In an instant, she was surrounded by countless dense weasels. They opened their mouths, revealing sharp fangs, and tore into my sister's flesh. Fresh blood immediately gushed out, soaking the cotton jacket on her. She opened her mouth wide to scream, but was immediately bitten on the tongue by a large weasel, which swallowed it piece by piece. My sister's scream was swallowed by it. And at this moment, my mother, gripping the stick, guarded the cellar door, her eyes unblinking, afraid to miss any detail. My sister's bones were pulled out one by one. Her pupils were dilated, yet her body still convulsed uncontrollably in agony. The white weasel licked its paws as if still unsatisfied, then signaled to the smaller weasels to change my sister's red wedding gown. After all this was done, my sister's body was taken away. Chowni's body was brought in. The scene before my eyes began to blur. My mother's screams reached me. I groggily opened my eyes. Only then did I realize my own mother was being choked and pushed down by me. Let go, Nina. Let go. Release your hands. My arms were pulled back by father and Elder Wu. The village chief anxiously pressed on my philtrum, and finally they managed to pull me up. It's all right. Nina is awake now. Elder Wu patted my red-eyed father's shoulder, saying, "Let go." My arm ached slightly. Then I looked at Elder Wu and asked, "What's wrong with me?" "Just now, you suddenly stood up and opened your mouth as if to bite Chowni. Mother rubbed her neck where my finger marks were still visible. Mother quickly got up to stop you, but you resisted unexpectedly." The three of us adults couldn't even hold you back. Mother spoke of the incident, still terrified, and I too was utterly horrified by what I heard. I stood up and led them to the deepest part of the cellar. Behind that jar, sure enough, a secret passage was discovered. Inside the secret passage, a weasel was sleeping. "It hasn't recovered yet." Elder Wu cried out in horror. "Don't let it escape." Father, without a word, directly used the rake nearby to stab through the sleeping weasel. The weasel let out a pitiful shriek, and fresh blood splattered onto my face. The foul, gamey smell assailed me, and my face burned as if on fire. "Ah!" I clutched my face, screaming miserably. The pain grew more intense. Half my face felt like it was burning, and I plunged into a dark dream. This time, I didn't dream of my sister. I dreamt of that white weasel. It was in a gloomy cave. At that time, its fur wasn't completely white yet. It lay there, faint bloodstains on its leg, and several tiny weasel pups nestled in its embrace. Just then, a noisy commotion came from outside. The white weasel cautiously recoiled. But at that very moment, a hook suddenly reached into the cave. Before the white weasel could react, the pups in its embrace were hooked out. Blood splattered across its face, and then, amidst pathetic cries, all its young were hooked out. I watched the white weasel tremble all over, but it endured, not rushing out of the cave. After an unknown period, it gave birth again. It had changed countless caves, but without exception, all its young were hooked away. Day after day, its eyes began to turn red, and the fur on its body became whiter. People had overcome the famine. No more hooks reached deep into its lair. But it never gave birth to young again. Instead, weasels like itself gathered around it. We are the descendants of those who harmed its young years ago. In its last conscious thought, that white weasel gave me an extremely eerie smile. I saw it open its mouth and speak in a human voice. I will not spare any of you. The burning sensation on my cheek returned. I awoke, gritting my teeth and grimacing. Around me were many people. My parents, Elder Wu, and several older relatives from the village. The blood on her face cannot be washed away. That is the mark of the Fox Immortal. The Fox Immortal will find her by that mark. The people in the room were silent, but I was the first to speak. I told them everything I had seen in my dream. As expected, everyone looked horrified. So that's how it is. Uncle Lee continuously retreated. Then, as if he couldn't bear it any longer, Uncle Lee grabbed the stick beside the chair and rushed outside. It's over! It's over! It's over! The Fox Immortal has come for revenge. We're all going to die. The incident occurred in that very moment. The white weasel leapt from the rooftop, its mouth full of sharp fangs, and bit directly into Uncle Lee's neck. Uncle Lee let out a tragic cry and fell to the courtyard, his warm blood melting the accumulated snow. The Fox Immortal's revenge spread like a bomb throughout the village, defying the bitter cold. Everyone rushed to the front of my house. Uncle Lee's body was still there, his blood already congealed. Village chief, we demand an explanation. My parents brought me home, and then went out with the village chief, leaving only Elder Wu sitting beside me, smoking his pipe. I lay prone before the window, watching the villagers outside, demanding an explanation. Cold wind blew in, dispelling the warmth within the house. The Fox Immortal is enraged. What are we going to do? Will we be suddenly bitten to death like Uncle Lee? Everyone murmured anxiously. Their faces were full of worry. Just then, a piercing scream suddenly erupted from the crowd, and then the crowd dispersed. Zhao Wu's wife knelt on the spot, a circle of fur wrapped around her neck. She was screaming in agony. It hurt so much. It wasn't until dark red blood soaked her chest that everyone realized with a shock that it wasn't a fur collar around her neck, but a weasel. Her moans gradually faded until Zhao Wu's wife breathed her last. For such a long time, not a single person stepped forward to help, not even Zhao Wu himself. They were all afraid, terrified that they would be next. The weasel, having killed, calmly licked its paws amidst the crowd. It wasn't until my father rushed home and grabbed the rake that the people seemed to awaken from a trance. They all stepped forward to stop him, but the one they surrounded was my father. It's Wu who offended the Fox Immortal. That's why the Fox Immortal is killing the villagers. Yes, if not for you, why would so many of us be dead? Just offer sacrifices, that's all. It's only a few girls. It's not like we'll go extinct. The crowd grew noisy and agitated. My parents were surrounded by the crowd. I couldn't see them. See, Nina, Some people aren't afraid until the blade cuts them. At this, Elder Wu's voice came from behind me. In the swirling smoke, I surprisingly felt a touch of sadness. Sacrificing a few girls certainly wouldn't lead to extinction, but over time, if too many girls are sacrificed, how can there be descendants to procreate? This commotion was finally settled by the village chief. It's freezing and almost midnight. Everyone, go home for now. We can resolve this tomorrow, can't we? Everyone's lips were pale from the cold. Seeing that the village chief had offered a way out, they naturally agreed. The bodies of Uncle Li and Zhao Wu's wife were still in the courtyard. My parents came inside, bringing the wind and snow with them. Elder Wu also stood up, preparing to depart. Please wait a moment, Elder Wu. My father called out to Elder Wu, who was about to leave. I want to ask you, what exactly is the Fox Immortal's origin? Why was Uncle Li so terrified? Elder Wu sighed, saying, You haven't been in the village long, so you don't know the full story. This tale is a long one. He sat down in the candlelight and slowly recounted the old story from years ago. In the winter of 1973, a pack of weasels arrived in the village. No one knew when. It was originally a year of severe drought. The village's food reserves were scarce. Families could only tighten their belts and pray for spring to come quickly. In January, a villager from the witnessed a human-sized weasel leading a pack of smaller weasels wandering through the village at night. The man thought he had woken up suddenly and misseen it. But when he rubbed his eyes for a closer look, the moment he lifted his head, that weasel was standing not far from him. The weasel's eyes glowed green in the cold, snowy night. Before the man could make a sound, he was overpowered by the weasel. It slowly approached the man, an eerie smile spreading across its face. Afterward, the man, bent at the waist, returned to his room. Not long after, a woman's tragic cry echoed throughout the village. Neighbors quickly threw on coats and rushed to his house. What met their eyes was the horrifying sight of the man, his mouth full of blood, gnawing on his wife's entrails. Some faint-hearted individuals even fainted on the spot. The man curled his little finger, carefully licking the blood from it. His eyes, however, were vertical yellow pupils. Afterward, in less than half a month, all the chickens and ducks in the village were bitten to death. Every night, the village's cattle bellowed madly, making the dogs bark incessantly. Everyone was disturbed and restless. On behalf of everyone, the village chief set up an altar in the village square, inviting Elder Wu to negotiate with that weasel. Just then, terrifying, piercing cries of weasels came from all around. Weasels emerged one by one from the woods surrounding all the villagers. Their eyes glowed green. Putrid saliva dripped in patches, and some weasels even had an indistinct red liquid at the corners of their mouths. The villagers screamed continuously, cowering in fear, and that gigantic weasel rose from the bushes, unafraid of people, stepping onto the altar and standing upon the sacrificial table. According to Elder Wu, that weasel proclaimed itself a celestial immortal, capable of protecting the peace of the region. As long as the villagers obediently offered sacrifices to it, it would bless everyone with favorable weather and good harvests every year. The only condition was that on the first day of every Lunar New Year, they had to offer it a young girl as a bride. Outside, the wind howled, sounding truly chilling. Inside the warm house, my parents, worried something might happen, stayed awake, constantly watching over me. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly, a candle flared. I woke with a start, my head dizzy and aching. My parents were still fast asleep, so I got up by myself to go to the toilet. I quickly ran to the toilet. As I was pulling down my pants, I suddenly noticed someone standing at the door. The person walked hastily, then urged me impatiently. "Nina, hurry up, sister can't hold it anymore." My entire body instantly stiffened. My sister was dead. So who was talking to me? Just then, something soft and cold crawled onto my shoulder. "Nina, sister can't bear it anymore." Her breath was icy cold, whispering into my ear. My back suddenly felt heavy, as 1,000 pounds, pressing me down so I couldn't stand straight. I swallowed, large drops of sweat rolling down my forehead. I carried my sister, heavy as an ice statue, out of the toilet. She was still talking behind me. "It's so cold there alone. Sister's whole body aches. Nina loves sister the most. Won't you come with sister?" I remembered my sister's state before she died, my eyes stinging. I said, "Sister, I'm sorry." My sister's body stiffened. Then an icy gust of wind blew past. A strong force suddenly came from behind me, followed by a piercing scream. My back suddenly felt light. I turned my head to look back, only then realizing my father was holding a fish spear, and at the tip of the fish spear was a yellow weasel. And what I had been carrying on my back was, in fact, the frozen body of Zhao Wu's wife, which had been in the courtyard since early morning. "Quickly, get back inside," Father roared, then pulled my hand, rushing inside. My mother was crouched behind the door. Seeing us enter, she quickly locked it. "You reckless child, so brave. How could you go out without saying a word?" Mother, worried, slapped me a few times, tears streaming down her face. "Do you know?" Mother just opened her eyes and saw you carrying a corpse in the snow, muttering who knows what. That weasel was wrapped around your neck, its glowing green eyes staring intently at you. I was terrified by Mother's words. I turned my head to look outside and saw the bodies of Uncle Li and Zhao Wu's wife had risen, now glaring at us. "Don't be afraid, we're safe now." My father put down the fish spear. "They're not allowed. They can't enter the house." Outside, the wind and snow were fierce, but the two bodies stood firm, unmoving. "This will absolutely not be easily overlooked." Father pulled me closer. "If anything happens, go out through the hole in the cellar. Don't look back. Don't worry about your parents." I was so cold I couldn't speak, but only shook my head incessantly. Mother, beside me, wept bitterly. The first crow of the rooster sounded, accompanied by a tragic shriek. I woke with a jolt from my dream, only then realizing Mother wasn't beside me. In the room were only Father and I. Murder, murder, murder. My father didn't even have time to get dressed before running outside. I was slower. When I went outside, I only heard Father's screams. "Shuanua!" My legs suddenly gave way, and I collapsed to the ground. The Shuanua. My father spoke of was none other than my mother. My mother was dead, flayed and hung upside down on the doorframe for her blood to drain dry. Dark red blood flowed down my mother's body onto the snow, forming a small black stream. My father knelt before the door, weeping in utter agony, but those around, watching the spectacle, merely said that my father, in his arrogance, had offended the Fox Immortal and was now facing retribution. Father's eyes were bloodshot. He chased those people away. Then he carefully took down my mother's body, which had frozen solid. Nina, my dear, this is your mother. She won't harm you. Father carried mother into the cellar. You dress mother. Father will be out for a moment. I nodded through my tears, watching father leave with his hunting rifle. As I put the last piece of clothing on mother, gunshots echoed from the mountains. The gunshots resonated for a long time. Toward late afternoon, father returned. His face was covered in dry blood, and his body carried the pungent, gamey smell of weasels. He stroked my head, saying gently, "Father has avenged your mother and sister." Outside, a commotion of voices, everyone blaming father for burning down the Fox Immortal's temple. Only then did I realize that father had not only gone into the mountains and killed many weasels, but had also burned down the Fox Immortal's temple in the village. After such a major incident, the village held an emergency meeting. Naturally, father and I were excluded. My father sat beside mother, gave me a baked bun, and put on me the fur coat mother had made earlier. Do you remember what father told you? My father neatly pulled up my collar. All of your parents' money is sewn into this coat. If something really happens, run north to your Auntie Mai's house. Do you hear me? Seeing me nod, my father finally smiled with relief. Father, can't we leave right now? My father shook his head. I've killed so many weasels. They won't spare me. That night, Elder Wu came. There's no other way now. We can only offer a few more brides to the Fox Immortal to appease its wrath. The village has prepared 10 people. Now, only Nina is missing. He looked cold, reaching out to pull me away. His arm moved, but father wouldn't allow it. He aimed his hunting rifle at Elder Wu, saying, "Stay away from my daughter." Elder Wu saw that my father wasn't joking and could only retreat. Mr. Chen, don't be so stubborn. Elder Wu continued to try and persuade my father. But father didn't want to hear him anymore and used his rifle to force Elder Wu outside. When I opened my room door, I discovered the courtyard was surrounded by villagers. They held torches, glaring furiously at us. The entire Zhao Wu family at the head of the village was bitten to death by the Fox Immortal. And Zhao Wu's wife and Uncle Li. It's all because your family broke the rules. The Fox Immortal said it will kill every single person in our village. You blame us for the entire Zhao Wu family being bitten to death. My father let out a cold laugh and said, Cao Ni was gravely ill and not treated in time. In the bitter cold, she was thrown into the river and drowned. Even after death, she was ghost married to a despicable old man. That's their retribution. Uncle Li lived long, and during the famine years, he used every means to survive, trading children for meat more than once. And Zhao Wu's wife? How many baby girls did she kill with her own hands? Do I still need to tell you all about that? Everyone was silenced by my father, unable to utter a word. After a long moment, someone in the crowd resentfully said, What about you then? Haven't you ever done anything wrong? If you hadn't, would your family be shattered now? I have. My biggest mistake was watching you hand over innocent children to that weasel without stopping it. My father's voice grew hoarse as he said this. The blade doesn't cut you. You'll never feel the pain. My father's words struck a raw nerve. The villagers, their final cover, leaped away, erupted in extreme fury. They raised the torches in their hands and once again advanced. Some even wanted to rush into the house. But when they saw the hunting rifle in my father's hands, they still retreated. They stepped back, a crowd surrounding our house. They were highly agitated, on faces that were usually kind and simple. Ferocity was now clearly etched. I stood at the window, looking out. My father was busy doing something behind me. When I turned around again, I suddenly saw that the villagers, at some unknown point, had put on black masks, covering their entire faces, only their glaring eyes staring fixedly at us. Clearly, my father had also seen this sight. He dressed me and stuffed a cloth bag into my hand. Go quickly! Do as father told you before. Hurry! My father pushed and pulled me into the cellar. Then my father moved the rice jar aside. Looking at the pitch-black hole, my father's eyes were red and swollen. See, father is sorry for what he's done to you, my children. Then my father pushed me into the earthen hole. The moment the hole's opening was blocked by the rice jar, I seemed to hear screams. The earthen hole was deep and long, initially quite spacious, but growing narrower further in. Eventually, I could only take off my clothes and hang them around my legs to pass through. When I saw light, I didn't know how much time had passed. I stood up from the hole's opening, only then realizing the exit was a deep well on the mountaintop. I looked up. With my own strength, I absolutely couldn't climb out. But black smoke billowed from behind, carried by strong winds. I choked and coughed. In my fading consciousness, I seemed to hear the villagers' voices. Burn them to death. Sacrifice them to the Fox Immortal. The red marks on my face throbbed painfully. My heart felt like it was on fire. Images of my parents and sister flashed through my mind like a torch. The pungent, gamey smell in my mouth grew stronger and stronger. In the thick black smoke, I saw many pairs of glowing green eyes. Faintly, I heard a few gunshots in my ear. Then I passed out. When I regained consciousness, my entire body felt as if it had been scalded by hot oil, every part aching as if pricked by needles, with piercing, unbearable pain. I struggled to open my eyes, and what met them was that white weasel. It was squatting on my chest, looking down at me. The fur clothes mother had made for me were soaked in bright red blood. The luggage father had packed was scattered everywhere. The baked buns had been trampled beyond recognition by the weasels. Those were delicacies my parents had never had the heart to eat. Only then did I realize I had been almost completely gnawed apart by weasels. There was hardly any intact flesh left on my left leg. In the moonlight from the cave entrance, I vaguely saw white bones. The white weasel stepped one paw onto my chest. In pain, I couldn't help but let out a groan. But unexpectedly, the next second, that white weasel burrowed into my mouth. The tip of my tongue throbbed with pain, and immediately after, blood spurted out. That white weasel had bitten off my tongue. A heart-wrenching pain engulfed me. My entire body felt crushed by a millstone. Its mouth smeared with blood, its cold eyes stared at me, as if mocking our overestimation of ourselves. My consciousness slowly blurred. I gathered my last strength and grabbed its fur. Clearly, it hadn't expected someone on the verge of death to do such a thing. Unprepared, it was grabbed by the neck. I opened my mouth, filled with all my hatred, and bit firmly into its neck. The white weasel let out a pained, tragic cry. The weasels feeding behind it rushed forward to help. The last ray of light was obscured by the weasels. I closed my eyes. I never thought I would open my eyes again, but this time I was in a different body. More precisely, I was in the body of the white weasel. I looked around. This was a cave full of straw. I was in the middle of the cave. Other weasels were curled up asleep around me, and not far from the straw nest was a mountain of white bones. Among the bones, many pieces of wedding gown fabric were faintly visible. I didn't know why I had become like this, but I knew this was my only chance. I stood up and walked out of the cave, only then, realizing the cave entrance was in the village cemetery. It wasn't yet dawn. I cautiously returned home. The cozy home of yesteryear had been burned beyond recognition. The blackened house was still smoking. The villagers had left long ago. Yes, there was no one left in this house to threaten them anymore. Just as I was lost in thought, Elder Wu arrived, carrying my body, which had been gnawed by weasels beyond human recognition. I watched him dig up my parents' bodies and bury us all together under the rubble. At some unknown point, it started snowing again. When I left, the ground was white, the shape of the house no longer discernible. I slowly moved, step by step, entering the house of the person who had screamed the most fiercely earlier. When I entered, the couple was fast asleep. Only a young girl, not much older, sat on the ground, cradling her newborn son, less than a month old. In the dark room, I opened my fanged mouth and directly bit through the couple's necks. That night, I don't remember how many houses I visited. Until dawn broke, the first cry rang out, followed by others. I squatted on a tree branch, calmly licking my paws. I saw the surviving villagers in a panic, saw the children who had lost their parents last night, standing aimlessly. "Read Fox Immortal, we beg you." A quick-eyed villager saw me. He knelt on the ground, begging, "Please spare us." I truly didn't understand why they'd rather believe an animal would bless them than decisively stand up and fight back just once. Indeed, Father was right. The blade doesn't cut you. You'll never feel the pain. Elder Wu stood at the edge of the crowd with a few children around him. His gaze was profound, as if he had seen me, hidden deep beneath the fur. I made a sound, and the crowd immediately looked towards Elder Wu. "Elder Wu, what did the Fox Immortal say?" Elder Wu looked conflicted, but still opened his mouth and said, "It wants you to offer your children to it. Tonight, throw all the children sacrificed into the well behind the mountain. If you do this, it will overlook everything and continue to bless us." Everyone cheered with joy. The children behind them, innocent and oblivious, only hugged their mother's arms tightly. For the first time, a voice of opposition arose in the crowd. They glared at me with sincere fury, as if they would flay me alive the next second. But human nature is truly ugly. I watched with my own eyes as child after child was thrown into the well. They fell onto the soft bed I had prepared for them, covered in foul-smelling blood. The pale weasels surrounded them. They were too terrified to make a sound, but I had no interest in them. It was late. I gently jumped out of the well. I looked at the lit candles in the village, counting house by house. 27 households. These remnants of scum were still clinging to life. Moans echoed in my ears. For some reason, I thought of my parents. It wasn't until dawn that I dragged my tired body to pile the dead together. Not far away, Elder Wu stood in the small village square, watching me. In the entire village, he was the only adult left. I didn't kill him. I just felt he still retained a shred of conscience. The children in the well needed someone to care for them. I held a torch in my mouth and threw it onto the pile of corpses. The flames erupted fiercely. In the rising heat, I seemed to see my parents. I leaped into the fire. My fur immediately ignited, and the smell of burning flesh assailed me. I lay amidst the pile of corpses, silently awaiting death. Perhaps it was the proximity of death, but the white weasel's remaining memories swiftly flashed through my mind. And in that fleeting moment, I saw a familiar figure. It was in a vast expanse of white snow. Nay, Elder Wu, braving the frosty wind, rushed over, cradling the nearly frozen weasel in his arms. You've lost your children. I've lost mine. Why don't we join forces and avenge those who killed our offspring? I opened my eyes, looking through the great fire into Elder Wu's eyes. What kind of eyes were those? As if they had died years ago, like a living corpse, hollow, bitter, filled with resentment. Then he took out the hunting rifle in his hand and pointed it at the child beside him. Bang! Fire! On the pristine white snow, vibrant red flowers bloomed, and the piercing gunshots echoed ceaselessly through the mountains and forests. It turned out he was the real Fox Immortal.